Good morning. We are beginning today with the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam, Book 7, Chapter 36. Still during the Devi Gita. Sri Devi said, O Himalaya, thus making one's own self attached to the yoga by the above-mentioned process, referring to the process of yoga that she taught in what we read last week, and sitting in a yoga asana, one of the asanas that she listed previously, one should meditate on my Brahman nature with an unfeigned devotion. Now hear how the knowledge of that formless existence, the imperishable Brahman, arises. He is manifest, near, yes, even moving in the hearts of all beings. He is the well-known highest goal. Know that all this, whatever, waking, dreaming, or sleeping, which moves, breathes, or blinks, is founded on him. He is higher than being and non-being, or higher than the distinction between being and non-being. Higher than wisdom, he is the best object of adoration for all creatures. He is brilliant, smaller than the smallest, and in him the worlds are founded and the rulers thereof. He is the imperishable Brahman. He is the creator, life, the revealer of sacred knowledge, speech, and he is omniscient, the cosmic mind itself. This is the truth. He is immortal, O Sanmya. Know that he is the target to be hit. The translator inserts a note here that the words higher than wisdom, higher than the wisdom, could also be taken to mean higher than Brahma, the creator. Because the word higher than Vijnana is the word. Vijnana is the word being translated as wisdom. Indeed, I agree that Vijnana, wisdom, is a good translation for Vijnana. But Vijnana also often denotes Brahma specifically. The Devi goes on. Take hold of the mystic name as the bow, as in a bow and arrow, and know that Brahman is the aim to be hit. Put on this, the great weapon, Om, the arrow of the mind, sharpened by meditation. Withdraw thyself from all objects, and with the mind absorbed in the idea of Brahman, hit the aim, for know, O Somya, that imperishable reality alone to be the mark. The great name Om is the bow, the mind is the arrow, the Brahman is said to be the mark. It is to be hit by one whose thoughts are concentrated, for then he enters the target. In Brahman are woven the heavens and the interspaces and the mind and the senses. Know him to be the one support of all, the Atman. Leave off all other words. This Atman is the refuge of the immortals. I will note here that the translator has been using the masculine pronoun him and he for Brahman here. Grammatically, this is actually an incorrect translation. In Sanskrit, Brahman is grammatically neutral, genderless. The translator is going with that because in this sense, Brahman is, well, to emphasize Brahman's personal aspect rather than using it, or so on. But it is no more masculine than feminine. It is beyond any differentiation of gender. I'll continue using it since it's what the translator has gone with, but just wanted to make that note here. In him, their nadis are fastened. The rivers or channels of energy within the Sukshma Sharira, or the subtle body, as the spokes to the nave of a chariot. He is this Atman that pervades the heart, and by his own free will manifests himself in diverse ways, and also as one, as prajna, in the dreamless state. Meditate on the Atman as Om, full of all auspicious qualities, and who is the chief aim of the Vedas, in order to acquire the knowledge of the Paramatman, who is beyond the Prakriti and the Sri Tattva. Your welfare consists in such knowledge. And we have another note from the translator on that. This shows that Brahman is the Antaryamin Purusha, the consciousness within the being, and the core of the various layers of the body. He resides in the heart, where all the 72,000 nadis meet, as spokes meet in the navel of a wheel. He moves within the organs, not for his own pleasure, but to give life and energy to them all. The Omkara, with all its attributes, must be constantly meditated upon. He manifests himself in manifold ways in the waking and dreaming states as Vishva and Taijasa, while he manifests as one in the state of Sushupti, or dreamless sleep, as Prajna. He is beyond darkness. He has no mortal body. Meditate on such Vishnu in the heart in order to get the Supreme Brahman with the help of the mantra Om. The result of such meditation is that there is the welfare of yours. All evils will cease, and you will get the bliss of the manifestation of the divinity, your real self within your heart. So that was the translator's note. Continuing with the words of the Devi. And I see that somebody just joined, so I'll make this note again real quick, that the translator here is using the masculine pronouns for Brahman, he and his, referring to Brahman. In Sanskrit, Brahman is gender neutral. And so technically, the more linguistically accurate translation to use would be it. I believe the translator is going with it to maintain the relation to Brahman here as personal. The idea of Brahman as a person could just as well be she or hers. But grammatically in the Sanskrit, it would be gender neutral. But I'll read it as the translator has given it here. He who is all wise and all knowing, whose greatness is thus manifested in the worlds, is to be meditated upon as the Atman residing in the ether, in the fourth dimensional space, in the shining city of Brahman in the heart. He is the controller of the mind and the guide of the senses and the body. He abides in the dense body, controlling the heart. He, the Atman, when manifesting himself as the blissful and immortal, is seen by the wise through the purity of the heart. The fetters of the jivas are cut asunder. The ties of linga dehas and prakriti are removed, and his works perish. The works of the tied, dense self, the body-bound self. When he is seen who is supremely high, or the same line could be read, when the supremely high looks upon the jiva. We have another translator's note, which I will go ahead and include. This shows the result of divine wisdom from the last verse. The avidya covers both Ishvara and Jiva. It presents Ishvara being seen by Jiva and Jiva seeing Ishvara. So in other words, it is not that avidya applies to Ishvara, but there are, the translator at least is interpreting it, that there are a double-layered veil that prevents one from seeing a veil over the eyes, so to speak, of Jiva, and a separate veil between Jiva and Ishvara. It is a direct bondage of jiva, since jiva is literally bound, and a metaphorical fetter of Ishvara, since Ishvara is prevented from being seen by jiva. Avidya is the name given to Prakriti in her active state, when her three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, are actively manifest. Destruction of avidya means putting these gunas into their latent state. There is a great difference between the destruction of the avidya fetters, as taught in this verse, and the unloosening of them, as previously described. There, when they were unloosened, avidya still remained, for it was merely a paroksha, or intellectual apprehension of truth. Here, avidya itself is destroyed by aparoksha, or intuitive knowledge of Brahman, drawing the distinction between intellectually understanding the teaching and experientially realizing it. The Devi continues, the bonds are 5. The lowest is the avidya bond of ignorance, then the linga deha bond of the body, then the pramachadaka prakriti bond, then the kama bond, the bond of desire, and the karma bond, the bond of action. When all these bonds are destroyed, then the jnani goes by the path of light to the santamka loka. Before proceeding further, all have to salute the Shishumara, the dweller on the threshold, the hub of the universe. The Shishumara literally means the infant killer, but what it refers to is the word of a porpoise, and it is the name of a constellation in the north of the celestial sky near the pole star. This is the translator explaining. The Devi goes on. The Brahman called Shishumaram, free from all passions and parts, is the highest golden sheath, the cosmic egg, or Hiranyagarbha. That is pure, that is the highest of lights. It is that which the knowers of Atman know. Some further notes given here by the translator. In the first respect, Brahman is meditated upon as Shishumara, and in the second as Gayatri. In man, the translator says, the Brahman manifests in the heart, or the auric egg, called the city of Brahman, or Brahmapura within the heart. In the universe, he manifests himself in the cosmic egg, also called the golden sheath, or Hiranyagarbha. These are the two places where Brahman may be meditated upon, within and without, as the innermost self and as the entire cosmos. This verse has been explained in 2 different ways by the commentators. First, as applying to Shishumara, and secondly, as teaching how to meditate on Narayana in the sun. In the second interpretation, the golden sheath would refer to the solar sphere, the orb of the sun. Supremely high Brahman resides in the excellent golden sheath. He is pure and without parts. The Devi goes on. The sun does not shine there in his presence, nor the moon and the stars. Nor do lightnings, and much less fire, shine there. When he shines, everything shines after him. By his light, all this becomes manifest. Him the sun does not illumine, nor the moon and the stars. Nor do lightnings, much less fire, illumine him. When he illumines all, then they shine after. This whole universe reveals his light. The eternally free is verily this Brahman only. He is in the west and the north and the south and the zenith and the nadir. Brahman alone is. It is he who pervades all directions. This Brahman alone is it who pervades. This Brahman alone is the Puranam, the full. That which exists in all of time, eternity. This Brahman is the best. This Brahman is alone the Vishvam, the universal, or the Puranam, the infinite or the full. This alone is the best, the highest of all. One who realizes thus is satisfied and has all that one wants to do and is considered as the best. He becomes Brahman, and his self is pleased, and he neither wants anything nor becomes sorry. O Raja, she addresses the Raja of the mountains, fear comes from the idea of a second thing. Where there is no second, fear does not exist. No danger then arises for him to be separated from me, nor I also get separated from him. O Himalaya, know that I am he and he is I. Know that I am seen there where my jnani resides. I do not dwell in any sacred place of pilgrimage, nor do I live in Kailasha, nor in Vaikunta, nor in any other place. I dwell in the heart lotus of my jnani, of one who knows me. The blessed one who worships once my jnani gets 40 times the fruit of worshipping me. His family is rendered pure and his mother becomes blessed. He whose heart is diluted in the all-pervading Brahman consciousness purifies this whole world. There is no doubt in this. I've mentioned a few times before that this copy of the book I'm reading was my father's old copy. He starred the entire Devi Gita here, but he underlined in particular that sentence. He whose heart is diluted in the all-pervading Brahman consciousness purifies this whole world. This refers, of course, to the reverence to the Guru. O best of mountains, I have now told everything that you asked about Brahma Jnana. Nothing now remains to be further described. This Brahma Vidya, the science of the knowledge of Brahman, is to be imparted to the eldest son, who is devoted and of good character, and to those who are endowed with the good qualities as enumerated in the Shastras, and not to be given to any other person. The traditional explanation of that is it is not to be given partially. That this teaching, if given, should be given to someone who you are going to pass everything on to, who you will train fully. One who is fully devoted to their Ishta Devata, and who is equally devoted to their Guru. To him the high-minded persons should declare the Brahma Vidya. Verily, he is God himself who advises this Brahma Vidya. No one is able to repay the debts due to him. My father underlined that line as well. Clearly, again, focused on the reverence due to the Guru. Verily, he is God himself who advises or who teaches this Brahma Vidya. No one is able to repay the debts due to him. He who gives birth to a man in Brahman is no doubt superior to the ordinary father. For the birth that a father gives is destroyed, but the birth in Brahman that is given by the Guru is never destroyed. In other words, who gives birth to a man in Brahman refers to who teaches someone, a man or a woman, who teaches someone the knowledge of Brahman such that they realize it, is an eternal gift that survives the death of the body. So the Sruti says, never do harm to the Guru who imparts the knowledge of Brahman. In all the Siddhantas of the Shastras, it is stated that the Guru who imparts the knowledge of Brahman is the best and the most honorable. If Shiva becomes angry, the Guru can save you. But when the Guru becomes angry, Shankara cannot save you. So the Guru should be served with the utmost care. My dad underlined that as well. And that is also a very common saying. My Panditji at my hometown temple is very fond of quoting that all the time, humorously. That if God becomes angry, the Guru can save you, but if the Guru becomes angry, even God cannot save you. So the Guru must be served with all cares that are possible. By body, mind, and word, one should always please him. Otherwise, he becomes ungrateful. He, not the Guru, but the Shishya. Otherwise, the disciple becomes ungrateful and is not saved if they do not cultivate this reverence to the Guru. O best of mountains, it is very difficult to acquire Brahmajnana. Hear a story on this. A Muni named Dadhyam of the Atharvana Gotra went to Indra and prayed to him to give him the Brahmajnana. Indra said, I will give you the Brahmajnana, but if you impart it to anyone else, I will sever your head. Dadhyama agreed to this, and Indra taught him the Brahmajnana. After a few days, the two Ashvins came to the Muni and prayed to him for Brahmavidya. The Muni said, if I give you the Brahmavidya, Indra will cut off my head. Hearing this, the two Ashvins said, we will cut off your head and keep it elsewhere, and we will attach the head of a horse to your body. Instruct us with the mouth of this horse, and Indra will cut off this head of yours. We will replace your former head. When they said so, the Muni taught them the Brahmavidya. Indra cut off his head with his thunderbolt. When the horse head of the Muni was cut off, the two physicians of the Devas replaced his original head. This story is widely known in all the Vedas. O chief of mountains, he becomes blessed who gets this, the Brahmavidya. Here ends the 36th chapter of the 7th book on the highest knowledge of Brahman, and the Mahapuranam Srimad Devi Bhagavatam of 18,000 verses by Maharshi Veda Vyasa. Chapter 37, Himalaya said, or Himavan Deva said, O mother, now describe your bhakti yoga, by which ordinary people who have no dispassion get the knowledge of Brahman easily. The Devi said, O chief of mountains, there are three paths widely known leading to the final moksha. These are Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. Of these three, Bhakti Yoga is the easiest in all respects. My father underlined that too. Bhakti Yoga is the easiest of the three in all respects. People can do it very well without incurring any suffering to the body and bring the mind to a perfect concentration. This bhakti again is of three kinds, as the gunas are three. His bhakti is tamasi, who worships me to pain or hurt others, being filled with vanity and jealousy and anger, praying for the misfortune of someone else, or even indirectly intending it. That bhakti is rajasic, when one worships me for one's own welfare, and does not intend any harm to others. He has got some desire or end in view, some fame, or to attain objects of enjoyments, and ignorantly, in thinking himself different from me, worships me with greatest devotion, praying to God who is separate from you in hopes of gaining riches or success or some sort of blessings for yourself, but without any ill will toward anyone else. That is rajasic bhakti. That bhakti is sattviki, when anyone worships me to purify their sins and offers to me the results of all their karmas, thinking that Jiva and Ishvara are inseparable and knowing that this action is authorized in the Vedas and therefore must be observed. This sattviki bhakti is different from the supreme bhakti, as the worshippers think me separate, but it leads to the supreme bhakti. The other two bhaktis do not lead to para bhakti, the supreme bhakti, or the highest unselfish love. They lead rather only to the obtaining of fruits within samsara. But tamasic and rajasic bhakti alone will never, if they alone are practiced, it will never lead to moksha. It will only at best lead to joys, and pleasures within samsara. Sattvic bhakti can, in fact, lead to moksha. Now hear attentively about the parabhakti that I shall now describe to you. He who hears always my glories and recites my name, and whose mind dwells always, like the incessant flow of oil, in me who is the receptacle of all auspicious qualities and gunas. Like the incessant flow of oil means with the very smooth way that oil will flow down a channel, very slowly, but not dribbling in drips, with a complete, smooth, slow steadiness. With that quality, it's referring to the mind dwelling always on Devi, quietly, slowly, without great dynamism, but with a continuousness. But he has not got the least trace of any desire to get the fruits of his karma. He does not want samipya, sarashti, sayujya, and salokya, and other forms of moksha. In other words, this type of bhakti is without desire for moksha. It is for its own sake. He becomes filled with devotion for me alone, worships me only, knows nothing higher than to serve me. He does not even want moksha. He does not like to forsake this idea of sevya and sevaka, servant and the servant and the master. He always meditates on me with a constant vigilance, actuated by a feeling of supreme devotion. He does not think himself separate from me, but rather thinks himself that I am the Bhagavati. So this simultaneously with the servant and the master. He considers all the jivas as myself and loves me as he loves himself. He does not make any difference between the jivas and myself, as he finds the same chaitanya everywhere, the same consciousness everywhere, and manifested in all. He does not quarrel with anybody, as he has abandoned all ideas about separateness. He bows down and worships chandalas and all the jivas, absolutely every person. He who becomes filled with devotion to me whenever he sees my place, my devotees, and hears the shastras describing my deeds, and whenever he meditates on my mantras, he becomes filled with the highest love, and his hairs stand on their ends out of love to me, and tears of love flow incessantly from both his eyes. He recites my name and my deeds in a voice choked with feelings of love for me. The translator here inserts a note. The paraprema bhakti is like the maddening rush of a river to the ocean, thence in the shape of vapor to the highest Himalayan mountain peaks to be congealed into snow where the various plays of bright colors take place. And the Devi continues. O Lord of the mountains, he worships me with intense feeling as the mother of this universe and the cause of all causes. He performs the daily and occasional duties, and all my vows and yajnas, without showing any miserly feeling in his expenditure of money. He naturally longs to perform my festivities and to visit places where my utsavas are held. He sings my name loudly and dances, being intoxicated with my love, and has no idea of egoism, and is devoid of his body idea, thinking that the body is not his. He thinks that whatever is prarabdha must come to pass, and therefore does not become agitated as to the preservation of his body and soul. This sort of bhakti is called the parabhakti, the highest devotion. Here, the predominant idea is the idea of the Devi, and no other idea takes its place as predominant. Other ideas can occur as the person travels around and performs actions, but no other idea is ever predominant in their consciousness. O mountain, he gets immediately dissolved in my nature of consciousness, whose heart is really filled with such parabhakti, such all love. The sages call the limiting stage of this devotion and dispassion as jnana, or knowledge. When this jnana arises, bhakti and dispassion gets their ends satisfied. So the limiting stage means, it's a bit of an odd way to phrase it, means the culmination, the upper limit, when this devotion leads to the realization of knowledge at its peak. When this jnana arises, bhakti and dispassion get their ends satisfied. Yea, he goes then to the Manidvipa, when his ahankara does not crop up by his prarabdha karma, though he did not fail to give up his life in devotion. In other words, at the culmination of one's life, or when the body finally drops off of such a completely realized sage, then that jiva goes to the Manidvipa, to the eternal celestial heaven of the Devi. O mountain, that man enjoys there all the objects of enjoyment, though unwilling, and at the end of the period gets the knowledge of my consciousness. By that he attains the final liberation forever. Without this jnana, without this knowledge of the supreme consciousness, final liberation is impossible. He realizes, Parabrahman, who gets in this body of his the above jnana of the pratyakatma in his heart. When his prana leaves his body, he does not get rebirth. The Sruti says, he who knows Brahman becomes Brahman. And the logic of Kanta Chamikara, gold on the neck, the ignorance vanishes. This is referring to a Upanishadic lesson in the philosophical classics. When this ignorance is destroyed by knowledge, he attains all his knowledge of the object to be attained when he recognizes the gold on his neck. O best of mountains, this my consciousness is different from the perceived pots, etc., or other objects, and unperceived Maya. Rather, it is different from the level on which there is a distinction. The image of this Paramatma is seen in bodies other than the Atma as the image falls in a mirror, as the image falls in water, or a reflection on water. So this Paramatma is seen in the Pitrilokas, in the realms of the ancestors. As shadow and light are quite distinct, so in my Manidvipa, the knowledge of oneness without a second arises. That man resides in the Brahmaloka for the period of a kalpa, who leaves his body without attaining jnana, though he had his perfect vairagyam. So in other words, if one is, vairagyam refers to detachment, unattachment to worldly objects. If one has perfected vairagyam and is no more attached to this world, and leaves their body in such a state of vairagyam, but without jnana, without experiential knowledge of Brahman, then one goes to the Brahmaloka and resides there for the period of a kalpa. Then he takes his birth again in the family of a pure, prosperous, in a pure, prosperous family, and practicing again his yoga habits, naturally, out of inborn habit, gets my consciousness, completes the final realization. O Raja of mountains, this jnana arises after many births. It does not come in one birth. So one should try one's best to get this jnana. If attaining this rare human birth, one does not attain this jnana, know that a great calamity has befallen him. For this human birth is very hard to attain. And then birth in a Brahmin family is rarer. Moreover, amongst Brahmins, the knowledge of the Veda, the true knowledge of the Veda is exceedingly rare. Most Brahmin families, or so-called Brahmin families, do not really know the Veda. The attaining of the 6 wealths, restraint of passions, etc., or 6 helpful qualities, success in yoga, and the acquisition of a pure, real guru. All these are very hard to be attained in this life. O mountain, The maturity and the activities of the organs of the senses and the purification of the body according to the Vedic rites are all very difficult to attain. Know this again, that to get a desire for final moksha is acquired by the merits acquired in many births. That man's birth is entirely futile who, attaining all the above qualifications, does not try his best to attain this jnana. So one should try one's best to acquire the jnana. Then at every moment he gets the fruits of the Ashvamedha yajna. There is no doubt in this. As ghee resides potentially in milk, so the Vijnana Brahman resides in everybody, the knowledge of Brahman. So make the mind the churning rod, and always churn with it, doing sadhana. Then by slow degrees, the knowledge of Brahman will be attained. Man attains blessedness when he gets this jnana, so the Vedanta says. Thus I have described to you in brief, O Raja of Mountains, all that you wanted to hear. Now what more do you want? And here ends the 37th chapter of the 7th book on the glories of bhakti and the Mahapuranam Srimad Devi Bhagavatam of 18,000 verses by Maharshi Veda Vyasa. Chapter 38. The Himalaya Deva said, O Devi, describe the places on this earth that are prominent, sacred, and worth visiting, and which thou likest best. O Mother, also sanctify us by describing the vows and utsavas, the vratas and utsavas that are pleasing to thee, and by performing which humans become blessed and get satisfied. The Devi spoke, O Himavan, all the places on this earth are all mine, and all should be visited, and every moment is fit for taking vows and utsavas. For I am of the nature pervading every moment, so whatever actions are performed at any moment are all equal to taking my vows and utsavas. O Raja of Mountains, still I will now tell something out of my affection to my bhaktas. Here, there is a great place of pilgrimage called Kolhapura in the southern country. Here the Devi Lakshmi always dwells. The second place is Matripura on the Sahyadri mountain. Here the Devi Renuka dwells. The third place is Tulajapura. Next is the place Saptasringa, the great places of Hingula and Dvalamukhi. Then the great places of Shakambhari, Brahmari, Sri Raktadantika, and Durga. The best of all places is that of Vindhyachalavasini, in the temple of Vindhyavasini in the Vindhya hills. The great places of Annapurna and the excellent Kanchipura. Next come all of these are very famous pilgrimage places in India. Next come the places of Bhima Devi, Dimala Devi, Sri Chandrala Devi of Karnat, and the place of Kaushiki. Then the great place of Nilamba on the top of the Nila Parvata, the place of Jambunadeshwari and the beautiful Srinagara. The Nila Parvata. So some of these places are still well known but have changed their name in the centuries since this was composed. The Nila Parvata, or the Blue Mountain or the Blue Hill, is in Guwahati, Assam, in modern India. And the great place of Nilamba there is also now better known by the name of Kamakya in Assam. The great place of Sri Guhya Kali, well established in Nepal, and that of Sri Meenakshi Devi, established in Chirambaram. The great place named Vedaranya, where Sundari Devi is residing. Then the place named Ekamvaram, and the place Bhuvaneshwara near Purushottama, where I always dwell as Parashakti Bhuvaneshwari. The famous place of Mahalasa, known in the south by the name Mallari, place of Yogeshwari Varat, and the widely known place of Nila Saraswati in China, the excellent place of Bagala in Baidyanath, the supreme place. That one is a famous Bagalamukhi temple in Bihar. Supreme place Manidvipa of Srimati Bhuvaneshwari, where I always reside. The Yoni Mandala Kamakya, the place of Srimati Tripura Bhairavi, the excellent of all places in this earth, where the Devi Mahamaya always dwells. There is no other place better than this on the earth. Here the Devi becomes every month, so this is again referring by another name, or perhaps two different places on the same mountain, but referring again to the Blue Hill in Kamakya, the Yoni Mandala Kamakya, the place of Srimati Tripura Bhairavi, the most excellent of all places on this earth, that the Devi Mahamaya always dwells. Here the Devi becomes every month in her course of menstruation, and where the virtuous men are seen. Here all the devas remain in the form of mountains, and where on the mountains the excellent devas inhabit. The sages say that of all places that are of the nature of the Devi, there is no place better than this Kamakya Yoni Mandala. Pushkara, the sacred place, is the seat of Gayatri, the place of Chandika in Amaresha, and the excellent place of Pushkarekshini in Prabhasa, the place of Linga Dharini Devi in Naimisharanya, and the place of Puruhuta in Pushkaraksha. Rati dwells in Asadhi. Dandini Parameshwari dwells in Chandamundi. Bhuti dwells in Bharabhuti, and Nakuleshwari dwells in Nakula. Chandrika dwells in Harishchandra, Shankari in Srigiri, Rishula in Japeshwara, and Sukshma in Amratakeshwara. Shankari dwells in Ujjain, Sharvani in the place Madhyama, and Margadayini dwells in the holy Kshetra Kedara. The celebrated Bhairavi dwells in the place named Bhairava, Mangala in Gayakshetra, Stanupriya in Kurukshetra, and Swayambhuvi Devi dwells in Nakula. Ugra Devi dwells in Kankal. Vishvesha dwells in Vimaleshwara. Mahananda in Attahasa, and Mahantaka in Mahendra. I'm not breaking down where all of these are. These are all very well known Tirtha Yatras, Yatra Tirthas, or pilgrimage sites in India, or in Nepal, or even into China, as the case may be. Bhimeshwari dwells in Bhima. The Bhavani Shankari dwells in Vastrapadma, and Rudrani in Ardhakoti. Vishalakshi dwells in Avimukta. Mahabhaga dwells in Mahalaya. Bhadrakarni in Gokarna, and Bhadra resides in Bhadrakarnak. Utpalakshi dwells in Suvarnaksha. Stanvisha in Stanu. Kamala in Kamalalaya. Chanda in Chagalandaka, situated in the south near the sea coast. Risandhya dwells in Kurundala. Mukuteshwari in Makota. Shandaki in Mandalesha. Kali in Kalanjara. Dhvani in Shankukarna. Stula in Stulakeshwara. And Parameshwari Hrileka dwells in the heart lotuses of the Jnanins. The places I have mentioned are all dearest to the Devi. First, the merits of these places are to be heard. Next, the Devi is to be worshipped by the rites and ceremonies according to the rules of the place. Or, O mountain, all the holy places of pilgrimages exist in Kashi. The Devi always dwells there. Persons devoted to the Devi see these places, and if they make japam and meditate on the lotus feet of the Devi, they will certainly be freed from the bonds of samsara. There is no doubt in this. If anybody getting up in the morning simply recites the names of these places, all his sins will instantly be burnt away. And if one reads in the time of Sraddha, during the offerings to the ancestors, before the Brahmins, these holy names of the Devi in these various tirthas, his pitris will be purified of their sins in the Mahakasha by the Mahaprana and will get their highest goal. O one of good vows, I will now describe to you the vows, or vratas, that are to be carefully observed by men and women. Here. Ananta Tritiyakya Vrata, Rasakalyani Vrata, and Ardhanandakara Vrata. These three vratas are to be observed in the Tritiya Titi and the third Titi. Next comes the Friday vow, the Shukravara Vrata, the Krishna Chaturdashi vows, the Tuesday vow, or the Mangalavara Vrata, and the evening twilight vow. In this twilight vow, the Sandhya Vrata, Mahadeva placed the Devi in the evening on an asana, upon a seat, and he, along with the other devas, began to dance before her. Fasting is enjoined in this vow, as it is in most vratas. And then in the evening, one must worship the Devi, the giver of all auspicious things. Especially in every fortnight, if the Devi be worshipped, she gets extremely pleased. O best of mountains, the Somavara Vrata, the Monday vow, is very agreeable to me. The worship of the Devi should be done, and then in the night, one must take one's food after having fasted during the day. Two 9-night vratas called the Navaratris are to be observed, one in the autumn and the other in the spring season. These are very dear to me. He is certainly my devotee and very dear, who for my satisfaction performs these and the other Nitya Naimittik vows, free from any pride and jealousy. He certainly gets the Sayujya Mukti with me. O Nagaraja, it is very interesting to hear her address Himavan as Nagaraja, as having Nagas among his subjects, as well as mountains. The holy Dol festival in the month of Chait, or Chaitra, on the third day of the white fortnight, which means the third day of the waxing of the moon, is very pleasing to me and should be observed by all. My devotees perform the Shayanotsava and the Parunamasi in the month of Ashadha, the Jagaranotsava in the Parunamasi in the month of Kartik. This means on the full moons. So these are full moon festivals. Shayanotsava, the Shayana festival on the full moon in the month of Ashadha, the Jagaran festival on the full moon in the month of Kartika, the Rata Jatra or Rata Yatra, and the third of the white fortnight in Ashadha. That means a chariot festival, when the Murti of the Devi is placed in a chariot, and there's a procession through the streets on the third day of the waxing moon in the Ashadha month. The Damanotsava in Chaitra, and my dear festivals in the month of Sravana, and various other festivals. In all these festivals, one should feast well with gladness all my devotees, and the Kumaris, well clothed and dressed, and the boys, not only the girls, the Kumaris, but the boys as well, thinking them all to be of my very nature. No miserliness is to be entertained, and I should be worshipped with flowers, etc. He is blessed and attains his goal. It is dear to me, who carefully and devotedly observes every year all these festivals. O Nagendra, thus I have described to you in brief the vratas that are pleasing to me. These instructions are not to be given to one who is not a disciple, nor one who is not my devotee. Here ends the 38th chapter of the 7th book on the vows and the sacred places of the Devi, in the Mahapuranam Srimad Devi Bhagavatam of 18,000 verses by Maharshi Veda Vyasa. Chapter 39. Himalaya said, O Devi, O Maheshwari, O thou ocean of mercy, O world mother, Jagadambika, now describe in detail how thy worship is conducted, the rules and ceremonials thereof. The Devi said, O Raja of mountains, I now describe to you the rites and ceremonies and the methods of my worship that are pleasing to me. Hear it attentively and with faith. My worship is of two kinds, external and internal. The external worship is again twofold. There is the Vedic vidhi and the Tantric Vidhi. The Vedic worship is also of two kinds, according to the difference in my forms. Those who are initiated in the Vedic mantrams worship according to the Vedic rites and ceremonies, and those who are initiated in the Tantric mantras worship according to the Tantric rites. That stupid man is entirely ruined and goes to Naraka, who, knowing the secrets of worship, acts contrary to them. In other words, it is very dangerous, particularly in the Tantric path. It is very dangerous to be initiated in these rules and then do it incorrectly. It can be dangerous. First, I will describe to you the Vedic worship here. The highest form of mind that you saw before, with innumerable heads, innumerable eyes, innumerable feet, the illuminer of the intelligences of all the jivas, endowed with all powers, higher than the highest, very grand, worship that, bow down to that, and meditate on that. O Nagendra, this is the first form of worship that I described to you. With your senses controlled, peaceful, with a well-concentrated mind, void of egoism and vanity, and devoted to that, perform yajnas to that, Vedic yajnas to that, take refuge of that, see that within the temple of your mind, since the Vedic rites do not usually use a physical temple. And always recite her name and meditate on that. Take hold of me and my ideas with one pointed loving devotion, and please me with the performance of Vedic yajnas, austerities, and gifts. By my grace, you will no doubt be able to get the final moksha. Whoever is entirely attached to me, thinking of me as the highest, is the foremost amongst the bhaktas. I promise that I will certainly deliver him from this ocean of the world. O Raja of mountains, meditation with karma and jnana with bhakti will lead one to me. Only the work alone, doing good deeds alone, will fail to get one to me. If all you do is good deeds, you will never get moksha. You will just get good karma, and you will get punya and worldly happiness. O Himavan, from dharma arises bhakti, and from bhakti arises the highest jnana. What are said in the Sruti and Smriti Shastras, the Maharshis take, what are said in the Sruti and Smriti Shastras, the Maharshis take that as the dharma. And what are written in other Shastras, they take them to be dharma bhasha, or the shadow or the reflection of dharma. Out of my omniscient and omnipotent nature, the Vedas have come. Owing to the want of ignorance in me, the Vedas can never be invalidated. The Smritis are formed out of the meaning of the Vedas. So the Smritis and Puranas, formed by Manu and the other rishis, are authoritative. In some places, it is hinted that there are other Shastras than the Vedas, taking the Tantras indirectly into account. Although the matters relating to the dharmas are mentioned therein, in the Tantras, but as they are apparently contrary to the Srutis, the Tantras are not accepted by the Vedic pundits. The other Shastra makers are marked with their ignorance, so their sayings cannot be authoritative. Therefore, he must resort entirely to the Vedas, who want the final moksha. As the Raja's order is not disobeyed amongst his subjects, so the Sruti, the command of man, the Lord of all, can never be abandoned by humans. To preserve my commandments, I have created the Brahmana and the Kshatriya Varnas. My secrets are all embodied in the Srutis. For that reason, the words of the Srutis are no doubt to be known and observed by the sages. O mountain, when the dharma declines and the adharma reigns supreme, I then manifest myself in the world as Shakambhari, Rama, Krishna, and others. Therefore, the Devas, the preservers of the Vedas, and the Daityas, the destroyers of the Vedas, are classified. Whoever does not practice according to the Vedas, I have created many Narakas for their lessons. When sinners hear of these Narakas, they get extremely terrified. The Raja should banish those stupid persons from his kingdom, and the Brahmins should not talk with them, nor take them in their own lines of initiation, nor when partaking of food, those who forsake the Vedic dharma and go for shelter to another dharma. The Shastras that are extant, as contrary to the Srutis and Smritis, are all Tamasa Shastras. Mahadeva has framed these Vama, Kapalaka, Kaulaka, Bhairava, and such like Shastras for fascinating the people, else he has no object in framing them. Those Brahmins that were burnt up by the curses of Daksha, Shukra, Dadhichi, and were banished from the path of the Vedas. It is for delivering them step by step that Mahadeva has framed the 5 agamas, Shaiva, Vaishnava, Shaura, Shakta, and Ganapatya Shastras. And those Tantra Shastras, there are some passages in conformity with the Vedas, and there are other passages contradictory to the Vedas. If the Vedic persons resort to passages in conformity with the Vedas, then there cannot arise any fault in them, including drawing from these Tantric Shastras. The Brahmins are not adhikaris to those Tantric texts that are contradictory to the Vedas. Those persons that have no claim to the Vedas can be adhikaris to these latter texts. Therefore, the Vedic Brahmanas should resort to the Vedas with all care possible and make the Parabrahman of the nature of jnana manifest within them. The sannyasins, vanaprasthas, householders, and brahmacharis should give up, so people of any stage of life should give up all their desires and take refuge in me. Free from egoism and vanity, kind to all creatures, their hearts wholly given to me, and engaged in speaking out my places with enrapt devotion. They always worship my Virat form, my cosmic form, immersed in the yoga called Aishvarya Yoga, the cosmic yoga, dealing with the glories of God. I illumine the understanding with the sun of my consciousness, and I destroy the darkness of ignorance of those persons that are always engaged in practicing yoga with me. There is no doubt in this. O Nagendra, thus I have described in brief the methods and practices of the Vedic puja. Now I will tell you the Tantriki puja, hear attentively. On an image or clean plot of ground, or on the sun, or on the moon, in water, in Vanalinga, in a yantra, or on a cloth, or in the lotus of one's heart, one is to meditate upon and worship the blissful, higher than the highest, the Devi, who creates this universe with the 3 gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, who is filled with the juice of mercy, who is blooming in youth, whose color is red like the rising sun, whose beauty overtops to the full, whose all limbs are exquisitely beautiful, who is the sentiment of love incarnate, or Sringara Rasa, who feels very much for the mental pain of her bhaktas, who being pleased manifests herself before the bhaktas, on whose forehead the segment of the moon, or the crescent moon, shines incessantly, and whose 4 hands hold Pasha, Ankusha, and make the Varada and Abhaya mudras. Until one is entitled to the internal worship, one should worship the external. Never he is to abandon it. So never abandon the external worship. Worship is internal when one's heart gets diluted in Parabrahman of the nature of the universal consciousness. O mountain, know my samavit, my consciousness, to be my highest nature, without any limitation. Therefore, it is highly incumbent to attach one's heart, free from other adjuncts, constantly to this samavit, constantly to my consciousness, or to consciousness on me. And what is more than this samvit is this elusive world full of Maya. So to get rid of this world, one is to constantly meditate on me, the witness of all, the self of all, with a heart full of devotion and free from any sankalpas or desires. O best of mountains, now I will describe to you in detail the external form of worship. Hear attentively. Here ends the 39th chapter of the 7th book on the worship of the World Mother, in Srimad Devi Bhagavatam, the Mahapuranam of 18,000 verses, by Maharshi Vedavyasa. And I think we are almost at the end, so I will do one more. It's a fairly short chapter, and that will end the Devi Gita. The Devi said, getting up from bed early in the morning, one is to meditate on the 1,000-petaled lotus, bright, of the color of camphor, in the top part of his brain, on the head. On this, he should remember his Sri Guru, very gracious looking, well decorated with ornaments, with his consort Shakti, and bow down to him, and within him he should meditate upon the Kundalini Devi thus. I take refuge into that highest Shakti Kundalini of the nature of the Supreme Consciousness, who is manifest as Chaitanya while upgoing to the Brahmarandra, to the aperture at the crown of the head, through which the soul emerges at death, and who is of the nature of nectar while returning back in the Sushumna Nadi, the nectar dripping down from the crown. After meditating thus, he should meditate on the blissful form of mind within the Kundalini fire situated in the Muladhara lotus. Then he should rise up to go for the calls of nature, etc., and complete Sandhya Vandanams and other duties. The best of the Brahmins, then, should for my satisfaction perform the Agnihotra Homa, and sitting in his asana, make a sankalpa to do my puja. Next, he is to make Bhuta Shuddhi, purification of elements of the body by respiratory attraction and replacement. This is a whole process that is to be learned from a guru. And then the Matrakanyasa, the meditation on each of the letters of the Sanskrit alphabet. Then he should arrange the letters of the Bija mantra of Maya and execute the Hraleka Matrakanyasa. In this, he is to place the letter Ha in the Muladhara, the letter R in his heart, and the vowel E in the middle of his brows, and Hrim on the top part of his head. Finishing then all the other nyasas according to that mantra, again a process to be learned from a guru, he should think within his body dharma, jnana, vairagyam, and prosperity as the four legs of the seat, and adharma, ajnana, avairagyam, and non-prosperity, these four as the body of the seat, on the four quarters, east, south, west, and north. Then he should meditate on the great Devi and the lotus of his heart blown by pranayama, situated on the 5 seats of the pretas. O mountain, Brahma, Vishnu, Rudra, Sadashiva, and Ishvara are the 5 pretas, or the 5 corpses, situated under my feet. These are of the nature of earth, water, fire, air, and ether, the 5 elements, and also of the nature of Jagrata, or the waking consciousness, Svapna, or dreaming consciousness, Shupti, deep sleep, Turiya, the 4th state of transcendental consciousness, and Atita Rupa, the 5th state excluding the 4 states, which together correspond to the 5 states of the 5 pretas and the 5 elements. But I, who am of the nature of Brahman, am over and above the 5 elements in the 5 states. Therefore, my seat is always on the top of these 5 forces. Meditating on me thus and worshipping me with his mind concentrated, he is next to make japam, reciting my name slowly. After japam, he is to make over the fruits of japam to me. He should then place the arghya for the external worship. Then the worshipper is to sprinkle with the astra mantra part all the articles of worship that are placed in front of him and purify them with water. He should close the 10 quarters with the Chotika mudra, performing the Dasha Digbandhakar, the binding of all the directions, and bow down to his guru. Taking his permission, he should meditate on the outside seat, the beautiful divine form of his heart lotus, and invoke the deity outside and place her on the seat by prana pratishta, or invoking the breath of the deity into a murti, and perform avahana, welcoming the arrival of the Devi into the murti, and present to her arghya, an offering of green grass, rice, etc., padya, water for washing the legs and feet after a journey, achamana, or water to sip, water for a bath, a couple of clothes, an upper cloth and a lower cloth, all sorts of ornaments and scents, flowers, and the necessary articles with due devotion. And he should worship the attendant deities of the yantra. If one be unable to worship every day the attendant deities, one must at least worship them every Friday. Of the attendant deities, one must meditate upon the principal deity of the nature of Prabha, illumination, and think that by her rays the 3 worlds are pervaded. Next, he should worship the Bhuvaneshwari Devi, the chief deity, along with other attendant deities with scents, good-smelling flowers, and naivedya, or food, consisting of various tasteful dishes. He should then recite the Sahasranama Stotra and the Devi Sukta Mantra, beginning with Aham Rudrebhi and Sarve Vai Deva Devi various mantras. The Devi Atharva Shiro mantra and the Upanishadic mantra of Bhuvaneshwari, these famous mantras repeatedly, and thus bring my satisfaction. With hearts filled with love and with hair standing on ends, all should satisfy me frequently with tears of love flowing from their eyes, and with voice choked with feelings, and with dancing, music, and singing, and with his whole body filled with joy. My glory is well established in the Veda Parayana and in all the Puranas. So for my satisfaction, one should offer daily to me one's everything with one's body, and recite the readings from the Vedas. Next, after completing the Homa offerings, he should feed the Brahmanas, the young girls, well clothed, the boys, and the public and the poor, thinking all of them to be so many forms of the Devi. Then he should bow before the Devi that resides in the heart, and finally, by Samhara Mudra, take leave of the deity invoked. O one of good vows, the Hrileka mantra, Hreem, is the chief of all mantras, so my worship and all other actions ought to be performed with this Hrileka mantra. I am always reflected in this mirror of Hrileka form, so anything offered in this Hrileka mantra of mine is offered, as it were, with all the mantras. Then one should worship the Guru with ornaments, etc., and think oneself blessed. O Himavan, nothing remains at any time unavailable to him who worships thus the Bhuvaneshwari Devi. After quitting his body, he goes to my place of Manidvipa. He gets the form of the Devi, and the Devas constantly bow down to him. O Mahidhara, thus I have described to you the rules of worshipping the great Devi. Consider this in all the aspects and worship me according to your adhikara, and you will attain your goal. There is no doubt in this. O best of mountains, this Shastra, the Devi Gita, you are not to tell to those who are not the devotees, to those who are enemies, and to those who are cunning. If one gives out this secret of the Gita, it is like taking off the covering from the breast of one's mother. So carefully keep it secret and think that this is very necessary. This Devi Gita ought to be given to a disciple, a bhakta, the eldest son, or to one who is good-natured and well-dressed and devoted to the Devi. O mountain, in the time of Sraddha, he gets the highest place of the Pitris who reads this Devi Gita before the Brahmins. Vyasa said, the Devi vanished there after describing all this. The Devas were glad and considered themselves blessed by the sight of the Devi. O Janamejaya, the Himavati next took her birth in the house of Himalaya and was known by the name of Gauri. Shankara, the Deva of the Devas, married her. Shadanana was born of them. That's his Kartikeya, or Murugan, or many other names. He killed the Tarakasura. O Raja, in ancient times when the ocean was churned, many gems were obtained. At that time, the Devas chanted hymns to the Devi with a concentrated mind to get Lakshmi Devi. To show favor to the Devas, Rama Devi came out of the ocean. The Devas gave Lakshmi to Vishnu, the lord of the Vaikunta. Vishnu was very glad at this. O Raja, thus I have described to you the greatness of the Devi and the birth of Gauri and Lakshmi. One's desires are all fulfilled when one hears this. O Raja, this secret I have described to you. Take care not to divulge it to anybody else. This is the secret of the Gita, so carefully conceal it. O one of pure heart, I have told to you this divine and sin-destroying narration that you asked. What more do you want to hear? Say. Here ends the 40th chapter of the 7th book on the external worship of the Devi, and the Mahapuranam Srimad Devi Bhagavatam of 18,000 verses by Maharshi Veda Vyasa, and that completes the 7th book. So
amazing. Thank you, Devila.
Thank you very much for coming. Jai Ma.
Thank you so much. I have a practical question. I guess you haven't had a time change yet. Is that correct? We had a time change today, so this session is an hour earlier in the day for me than usual.
Oh. I have not. So yeah, sorry about that.
Are you going to no. Are you going to have a time change? I just wanted to plan ahead.
You know, I honestly don't know. I mostly rely on my computer to change for me. I would have to look
at first weekend in November for us.
First weekend.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
Sunday.
So it's probably just
there we go.
Okay.
Yeah, so a little bit.
Thank
a little
you.
bit. Thanks, Andy. Yeah, so a
Yeah.
little bit different between the UK and the US.
Yeah, no problem. I managed to make it. I wasn't sure. I thought you might be a different time, but I wasn't sure whether it's an hour earlier or later. So
Right,
I'm glad
right,
I managed to join.
right. Yeah, I'm glad you managed to make it.
Thank you.
Dave, the question, if I may.
Yes, please go ahead.
Chapter 39,
Yeah.
difference between Vedic and Tantric.
Yes.
Caught most of a lot of the phrases, but there's a lot of terms in there that were kind of key terms that I didn't really like. Some of them I didn't totally know the meaning
Sure, sure,
of. And
sure.
could
Sure.
you maybe just kind of paraphrase what was going on there? What?
Yeah.
I know that's maybe a big question, but
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, okay. There's a lot that I could break down in that.
right.
In chapter 39, yes. So she breaks down that there's two modes of her worship, external and internal.
Mm.
The external further breaks down into the Vedic and the Tantric. The Vedic again breaks into two different forms of the Devi, the cosmic form and the embodied form. Essentially, the Vedic form, well, this actually kind of largely applies to both the Vedic and the Tantric forms, and is part of the issue with indeed her going through so many terms. Both of them require training from a guru to practice. She summarizes them here. She summarizes all the various modes of worship, but she certainly doesn't give the actual instructions for in detail how to do all of this. All of it requires guru diksha, initiation by a guru, and training in the specific methods of the sadhana. She kind of summarized the overall points of the various curricula. The main emphasis she put is that for those following the Vedic method, there is a hierarchy of scriptural authority in that the Sruti, or the Vedas, are the most authoritative, that the Smritis and other texts are of, and that, by the way, includes the Devi Bhagavatam itself. It is Smriti, not Sruti, are fallible. They are of mixed authority. There are some verses and some mentions in them which are to be taken as false if they contradict the Sruti, because they were composed later, attempting to follow the light of the Dharma, but are not immaculately inspired nor perfectly preserved. And so the general emphasis is that in reading any Smriti text, such as any Purana, for example, all Puranas are Smriti and not Sruti. Any line, any verse, any teaching which contradicts the Vedas should be rejected. If they ever come into conflict, the Sruti is to be taken as the higher authority. That was the thing that she greatly emphasized when going over the distinction between the Vedic and the Tantric worship. In terms of the further details, she went through all sorts of detail of the meditation, the Hrileka Matrakanyasa, the meditation with different bija mantras and different chakras, the Kundalini and the Soma nectar that go up and down the Sushumna channel, and so on. All of that requires a guru's training. She kind of summarized it as these are the main points comprising the Shakta Tantrika Upasana. But to actually learn it and do it requires a guru's initiation and to practice as they teach.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking too, you're touching on this, but the very last couple paragraphs of that chapter, they're all like, in those tantra shastras, there are some passages in conformity with the Vedas and there are other passages contradictory to the Vedas. If a Vedic person resorts, like that, talking about, and then the Brahmins are not adhikaris to those tantric texts that are contradictory to the Vedas. What about that phrase, for instance? What's an
Yeah. So,
adhikari again? And what is that phrase saying?
let me look at the exact phrase. I think I know, but let me just check the exact phrase that you're
Chapter
referring to.
31.
Sorry, you're saying
first or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, in those Tantra Shastras, there are some passages in conformity with the Vedas, and there are other passages contradictory to the Vedas. Yes, if Vedic persons resort to passages in conformity with the Vedas, then there cannot arise any fault in them. So in other words, go ahead and make use of scriptures besides the Vedas, which is indeed what we are doing right here. The Devi, Bhagavatam, and all the Puranas are not part of the Vedas. Perfectly fine to use passages that are in conformity with the Vedas. The Brahmins are not adhikaris to those tantric texts that are contradictory to the Vedas. Those persons that have no claim to the Vedas can be adhikaris to these latter texts. Yes.
Oh, what's an adhikari? What's
adhikari? That? Yeah. So what this refers to is adhikaris in this case are practitioners, essentially. Practitioners of those texts. So the Brahmins who are taught the Vedas do not practice the non-Vedic tantras.
The Puranas.
Largely the Purana. She was especially referring to the tantras specifically, which are the Puranas are not tantras. Technically that would refer more to the agamas. But
agamas.
The agamas are like manuals of temple worship, manuals of idol making, and a lot of different subjects. There's hundreds of them. It's a giant library of scriptures. Typically, they are not practiced by Brahmins who are taught the Vedas. Typically, they were saying those who have no claim to the Vedas, those who are not initiated, who are not Brahmins, for the most part, and who are not initiated in the Vedas, are the people who practice who are adhikaris or practitioners of the tantric texts. In other words, they are specifically to make the same spiritual realizations more broadly available to more people is their main purpose. Because the requirements to be initiated into them are much less stringent than the strict and orthodox Vedic path.
Wow. Would you consider something like a TM initiation or, initiation by Amma, when you're, getting a mantra from Amma or something like a real guru? Is that considered some sort of initiation like that? Or is this that's a whole other thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Getting a mantra from Amma is absolutely a tantrika diksha.
Interesting.
Yeah. What Amma teaches is almost purely tantric, and it's absolutely a traditional orthodox tantric mantra diksha. Yes.
Amazing. And then TM, transcendental meditation.
Yeah.
Would that be considered?
It's a traditional technique of Vedic jnana yoga. It's a jnana yoga meditation technique directly from the upasana khandas of the Vedas. The way that which mantras are taught is unorthodox in TM. Maharishi changed it from the Vedic technique for a very specific reason that I hesitate to get too much into in detail.
Sure.
There's kind of a secret reason there.
Sure.
But the basic technique of the meditation is directly out of the Upasana Khanda of the Vedas. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And it is more, but it's more of a Vedic technique rather than tantric in that case.
The technique itself is used in both Veda and Tantra. The mantras are almost entirely tantric that he gives. Actually, that was the main change that he made.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Wow. Sounds like a whole rabbit hole.
it's a whole rabbit hole. Yeah. There's a whole history of the TM mantras, where they came from and why they were chosen, which I hesitate to get into too much publicly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of secrecy around that, but yes, there's a whole backstory behind that.
Neat. Neat. Right on. Thanks so much, Deva.
Yeah. Thank you for coming.
Jai Ma.
Jai Ma.